Hilarious. All right, here we go. We're going to do a lecture, kind of a two-part lecture. So we're going to do a little bit with some text stuff and some path stuff for some projects that we talked about during critique earlier today, so that I can give some ideas to you guys about how to kind of do some things in your future projects. And then we're going to do a little bit of the puppet pinning tutorial, which we will use for our assignment that we're going to start on next week. Okay, so we had a few things come up in class today that I wanted to just share in terms of like functionally creating things and helping you guys kind of understand how to use 3D and the camera and text and things like that to just help build your knowledge base on some of this stuff. So let's start with the Batman symbol, right? So we're gonna go over real quick how you can kind of create and utilize shapes and things like that from different films or projects or whatever to do kind of cool stuff with them inside of After Effects. So we're gonna go in here and we're gonna start playing with the Batman symbol. And so this is going to kind of be like a path tutorial type thing on how you can use paths as vectors inside of After Effects and create cool stuff. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go find the bat symbol on the Googles. And we got a bunch to choose from. So we're doing the old school Batman, which is like this one right here, right? Mm-hmm. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually try to recreate that whole thing with vector, with paths and vector. And then we're going to use the After Effects' built-in 3D space to kind of extrude and bevel that stuff a little bit and make it kind of interesting and usable inside of After Effects. So let's take this really crappy, low-resolution Batman symbol. I'm going to say open this image in a new tab. And I've had to do a lot of work like this in my career where you get a logo or you get something that's really shitty low resolution and you need to make it high resolution. You basically need to recreate the logo, right? And I've had like, oh, I need to have this in 4K and it's only 320 by 240. You know, you can't take a 320 by 240 image and blow it up to 4K. It just looks like garbage, right? So you got to make it from scratch, and that's what we're going to do here. So I'm going to save this image. I'm just going to throw it on the desktop in a folder called AE underscore Batman, actually called underscore shape underscore puppet something, whatever we're going to do here. All right, so I'm going to create a folder for this thing, and then I'm going to call this bat symbol .jpg, and we're going to save it. All right, so we've got our crappy low resolution bat symbol. So let's bring that into our project. So we're going to bring that into our project. Desktop, where is it? I just made it. All right, here's our bat symbol. And I think I'm going to keep this at 1080p for now, but let's just take our bat symbol and put it on our composition and blow it up and see what it looks like. So if we take our bat symbol and we blow it up to where we want to use it and we make it full resolution, this is what it looks like. Potato quality, right? Garbage. We can't use that. And it's also got a Wiggle Walls watermark on it. So we don't want to use that either. Yes, DeAndre.
Resolution's pretty bad too.
Yeah, that's what potato quality means. So we're going to remake this. So let's start with the easy part first. Let's do just a simple oval, right? We need an oval. I'm going to make the oval first. And we can do that pretty easily just by selecting the ellipse tool. And I believe if we just double click it, yep, we get an ellipse shape. So boom, our oval's pretty much taken care of. So we've got our oval. Let's go ahead and make this oval a proper color. I'm going to cancel that for a quick second. I'm going to go back to my shape layer. I'm going to select the fill, and I'm going to grab the yellow from the logo. So now at least we got the right color. All right, so we have our oval. I'm going to go ahead and name this Bat Oval so that I know what it is. And we've got our oval. Excellent. Okay, so we're on the right track. Oval, check. All right, bat symbol itself. So now is where we need to use the path tool to create the bat symbol. I am going to kind of go from the... I'm trying to think about how this is going to extrude out when I do the extrusions or the bevels on it. I'm going to go from the outside of the logo. So it's where where we're seeing the bevel. So I'm going to start up here in the upper left-hand corner and go around the entire shape and create a shape layer out of this logo that I can start working with in 3D Space. Okay, so I need my pen tool and I need to make sure that I don't have any layers selected, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to kind of make this full screen, and I did use the tilde key to do that, by the way. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so I can kind of see where things are, and let's create this shape. So I'm going to start on this corner in the upper right, on the left hand side. And again, I say this about keyframes all the time, and I'm going to say it about the pen tool too. Less is more in terms of the pen tool. We don't want to do this with the pen tool. Right? This is not what we want. We want to create a nice, smooth vector shape with as few nodes and clicks as possible. So we're going to do a lot of clicking and dragging to kind of create these complex curves, right? So we're going to come in here and create these nice, complex curves and try to use as few nodes as possible to create this outside shape. It doesn't need to be absolutely perfect. In some instances, I like to actually embellish these a little bit and put stuff in there that wasn't necessarily in the original logo. Like I want a nice little curve right here on the bat's dome. And then I'm just going to use the middle mouse key and I'm going to continue working across my image. If you click on a node and you need to get back to where you were working, just click on the last one and it should continue drawing your shape layer out. And trying to find the corner here where it makes sense and then adjust a little bit. And same thing over here. We're just going to draw a nice curve out. You'll notice that I draw a lot of curves on this stuff, right? So I'm going to kind of come in here into the corner, draw this one out. I'm just going to try to go right to the corner in the upper left. If it helps, one thing that you can do here too is you can shut off the fill so you can just work on the path itself. So you're not monkeying around trying to figure out what we're doing with the fill in the way. I'm going to just readjust this a little bit. It's looking pretty good. I'm going to hit Alt key to kind of give this some handles so I can create a nice complex curved corner here. That's looking pretty nice. I'm going to go back to this last node that we dropped off on, and then I'm just going to kind of draw a node out right here on this long corner. There we go. That's looking pretty good. Yeah, go ahead, Adam.
I'm wondering, like, whenever I make a...
All right, so Adam asked a question about why, when I draw a node with a curve on it, does the next node always have a curve on it too? Something like this, right? So where you see this curve right here, and you control that with the handle itself. And so let's say you wanted this this line to be like a hard corner, right? The way that you can do that is you hold the Alt key and you can control the handles individually of each other. So you can create nice complex shapes by using the Alt key and clicking on those handles and controlling the handles. All right, so here we are. I'm going to just continue to work here. Again, I'm using very few vertices here so that I don't have a million nodes to adjust if I want to adjust the way that this looks after we're done. So it's like click and drag, click to get a corner, click and drag to get a complex curve, then we'll come back here, adjust a little bit, and then we'll go back to the node we were working on and continue drawing our shape out. Cool, this is looking great, and then I'm going to go ahead and draw another curve over here. Adjust a little bit. There we go, and then that is about it. Like, didn't take very long to do that. We got a nice complex shape, looks really good. We can add a fill to this now. So let's go ahead and just add a black fill to it, and we'll take a peek at it and see how it looks. So if we get rid of the bat symbol shape, this is what we've got. It needs a little work in a couple places. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to fix a few things. I'm not huge on how this looks, but again, take into consideration that we're going to have a bevel on this. Like, I think this would be cooler if we like bent it in instead of had it bent out. Kind of like so. That's nice. Okay, cool. So shapes give us a lot of advantages, right? So let's go bat symbol here. And so we've got our two shapes that we're going to use here. So the reason shapes are great inside of After Effects is they continuously raster, which means they act like vectors, right? So I'm going to come in here and create a camera and kind of demonstrate that. So we've got a camera. I'm going to say okay, whatever. It looks like I'm good to go here. I'm going to create some 3D, make our layers in 3D. Now we've got our camera, and if I take my camera and the C tool and click it a couple times for the truck tool, and I truck this in, you'll notice no matter where I go, the edges are always nice and clean, right? Nothing's gonna pixelate. So you can infinitely zoom on this shape and it stays clean no matter what you do. So that's one reason why shapes are really nice inside of After Effects. It's just like drawing in Illustrator or using a vector file. It's the same thing. So we'll come back out here and kind of center this up. Actually, I'll just reset the camera real quick. So reset the camera, we get back to 1 with everything. All right, so the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna actually make this beveled like we saw the original shape was. And we're gonna use lights to kind of help out the edges and things like that and really kind of shine this thing on. We're gonna start working in the Cinema 4D space. It has some benefits, but it also has some drawbacks. So we can now extrude and bevel shapes, which is what we're going to do with this. We've got ray traced reflections, which is cool. It looks like my bat symbol just disappeared. That's fun. Curved footage layers, so we can actually take this and rotate it or curve it, which is really neat. And we can use material overrides and text shape bevels on sides and environment layers and reflections. What we can't do is we can't use blending modes, track mats, layer styles, mask on effects. We can't preserve underlying transparency, light transmission. There's a whole bunch of things you kind of lose, like motion blur, camera depth of field, etc., etc. So if we're making this and we want to use it in an additional project where we want to use those things, we probably want to do whatever animation we're going to do with this and then export it or use it as a subcomp. I think we can use it as a subcomp and turn off Cinema 4D, but I'm not 100% on that at this point. So we're going to say okay, and we're going to roll with this and see what happens. If you go into the options on the 3D renderer, you have some quality options for this stuff. We're going to stay in draft mode right now. I'm going to set the draft quality to 10. And then we're probably going to come in here and monkey around with these quality levels a little bit before we go to render. So you probably, when you go to render, you're going to want to like pump the quality up so that you get good, nice looking renders, and then wait like 4 days while this thing renders because it's going to take forever. All right, so let's say okay. All right, cool. We've got all that. It's all looking good. We've got our bat symbol. It's drawn out. I don't know why it disappeared. That's something that's interesting to me. There it is. All right, well, cool. I just brought it forward in Z-Space a little bit. So let's go in and start playing around with the effects on this a little. So I go into the bat symbol itself, and we go to geometry options, and it allows us to bevel. So let's go ahead and bevel this thing and pick a bevel style. Let's just call this angular. And you can see we've got a bevel. We can extrude too, but what we really need to set this bevel off is we need some lighting effects. So I'm going to go into material options, and I'm going to set the reflection intensity up a little bit. And all this good stuff. Diffusion, specular shininess, blah, 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 blah. Cast shadows is off, accept shadows is on. Let's make sure accepts lights is on. All right, now we need to add some lighting. So I'm going to go ahead and add some lights. I'm going to make a nice white light. Click OK. I'm okay with all this. I'm just going to use point lights just to see how things kind of work out. So what I want to have happen here is I want to kind of move my lighting around so I can start to see these beveled edges. Hopefully this is going to work. I thought there was a way that you could control the color of the bevel. So right now we're not really seeing it. It could be because it's a black layer. Let's try extruding this a little bit and see what happens. Okay, it looks funky as all get out. I'm going to change the color of this fill and see what happens too. It's been a long time since I've played with shape layers like this, so you'll have to give me a little bit of grace in terms of what we're getting. Okay, so now you can actually make the bevel out, which is good. And it didn't bevel as nicely as I was hoping it would. Okay, that's not too bad. Let's try some of these other options and just see what it looks like. Meh. Okay, where's my light hiding? Up top. So I'm going to move my light around a little bit more and just see what happens when I start playing with the positioning of this light. Okay.
Would it matter if the light's a floodlight or a spotlight at all?
It shouldn't make a difference. The only thing that's going to change is how the shadows fall and where the light fall off happens.
Alright.
I'm going to play around with this just a little bit more to see if I can make this do what I want it to do. I'm going to say cast shadows on, and I'm going to go to... Ah, see, that's fun. Okay, so my light is still pretty far back, which is surprising. I thought it would be. Okay, so now you can see the bevel is starting to pick up some of these lighting effects, right? You can pick it up right here. I'm going to turn the specular shininess up quite a bit so that we start to get a little bit more punch from the highlights on these shapes. Ah, there we go. Okay, cool. So now it's starting to blacken out nice. Yeah, and you can see now we're picking up these nice highlights on the bevel. Okay, so the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to shut these shadows off for now. And I don't want it set to only, I want it set to off so that we just see what we want to see. Oh, that's interesting. So as soon as I did that, I lost all of my bevel interest. Huh. Cool. Okay, I'm gonna just take my background shape here and I'm gonna press this thing forward. Come on now. Yeah, this is why 3D and so like actual 3D inside of After Effects is kind of craptacular. Let's see, so it's at -99. What did I actually bring this to? Let's check this out. So let's just set this to 0. And then we're gonna lose our bat. And then we're going to take our background and set it to like 10. Now we should see our bat again. There we go. And we've got really, really short shadows, which is fine. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start playing around with these, with this light just a little bit more. So I'm going to shut off the oval and just work the bat itself. So yep, we got some nice shadows picking up over there. I'm going to try deepening this bevel a little bit. Go. Oh, the bevel's really weird. Huh. I don't know exactly what bevel hole depth is doing. Let's just set some extrusions in here too and just see if we can't get this thing to start looking the way that we want it to look. Alright, so I'm going to do a couple of things. I'm going to take my light and work my light just a little bit more and move it back in Z space. I actually want it to kind of go behind the bat. There we go. Now it's starting to pick up these highlights nice. Cool. Okay, then what we're going to do is we're going to duplicate that point light. It's Command D to duplicate, and then I'm going to take this point light over and I'm going to scoot it over to the other side. Ah, yes, there we go. So lighting's everything. And get rid of the extrusion too. We don't need the extrusion. I'm going to try my angular bevel one more time too and see if that picks up the speculars a little bit better. Ah, yes it did. Now it's starting to look a little bit more like what our original bat symbol looked like with its edges. Let's take our lights and continue working those a little bit. I'm going to start working the intensity a little bit on these so we get a little bit better specular highlighting. There we go. Yeah, that's starting to read really nicely over there. Do the same thing on the right hand side. Okay, cool. Now it's starting to look a little bit more metally, which is nice. Let's take one more point light. So I'm going to duplicate this point light again. Zoom out here a little bit so I can see where these point lights are. Okay, one's way the heck over there. Let's take point light 2 and scoot it back here a little bit. Scoot it back here a little bit, and then good. And then we're going to take this one and we're going to scoot it down. Try to get some more specular highlights happening on these bevels. Yeah, there we go. That's looking pretty nice. Hey, cool. All right, so then let's go back to our bat symbol one more time and change the fill type back to black, and or really close to black, and let's see what happens with it. Hopefully we can keep some of that specular highlighting on the edges. All right, nice. So let's take our third point light here and just really push the intensity. More. Yeah, there we go. Okay, cool. Let's turn on our bat oval. See what kind of craziness happens when we do this. Okay, yeah, so what I'm going to do with the oval is I'm going to kind of shut... I know that the oval has this big bevel around it, but what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate the oval, and I'm going to create the bevel independent of... Yeah, independent of the yellow oval in the background. So we got our bat oval. I'm going to go ahead and shut off the... Sorry, shut off. Yeah, that's what I want. Material options. Okay, I'm going to shut accepts lights off, so that we're just going to get the clean yellow color of the oval in the background. There we go. That's better. Still wish this was picking up a little bit more light. I feel like our bat needs to have a little bit more gray in it, unfortunately. Cool. Oh, that's so much better. All right. Ways that we could fix this. We can take our bat symbol, duplicate it, and this is just going to make the render take a whole lot longer. Let's go into geometry options, shut the bevel off, and then change the fill type to black so that we get a nice black bat. You can do it, computer. I believe in you. I'm going to take this guy and just scoot it out in front like -1 pixel. We should see it be black. There it is. Boom. Okay, so we're getting closer. A little bit closer every time. Okay, so the same type of thing is what we're gonna do the same type of thing with the oval in the background. So I'm gonna take this bat oval and I'm gonna duplicate it. Then all I'm gonna duplicate it twice actually. So I'm gonna take this one and I'm gonna call this oval bevel. And I think I can do this in one layer. So I'm gonna go into the single layer, I'm gonna go into contents, and I've got one ellipse. I'm gonna duplicate that ellipse. So I have 2 ellipses inside one shape layer. And then I'm gonna make one a little smaller and one a little larger. And then we're gonna bevel that shape, and hopefully we'll get kind of what we have in the original logo. So ellipse 1, let's go into the transforms on ellipse 1, and let's just scale it down by like 5%. So let's bring this to 95%. Probably way too much. I think it was way too much. So let's go like, let's go 97%. That's a little bit closer to what I want. 97%, and then we're going to go into ellipse 2 and go into the transforms and call this 103%, and we should get a nice ellipse that's in the original shape that we were looking at. Let's set our fills to like a nice gray color again for both of these. Ooh, we might even be able to... Sorry, I'm just thinking. Let's see here. I don't actually want to undo that real quick. I'm going to go to the fill color on the oval itself and call it fill gray. Okay. Alright, interesting. So right now our oval is behind our yellow oval, so I'm going to pull this forward. Let me see. I'm just going to set this to 5 and see what happens. Yep, everything grays out. Okay, so let's see if we can make this do what we want it to do. So I want to take the ellipse 1, which I think is the inner one, and can I just reverse? Nope. Okay, the direction doesn't matter. Let's see what the fill rule, even odd. Yeah, I kind of wish this was like a mask where you could just invert it real quick, but that is not looking to be the case. I kind of wonder. Oh, I have an idea. Okay. I'm trying to think if this will do what I want it to do. I'm thinking about just extruding this shape and then lighting it instead of having... Well, see, we got to have the middle cut out in order for this to work. Let's see. What happens if we turn off the bevel and then we extrude this by, say, like 20 pixels? Watch it take forever to render. I'm going to go ahead and go into my camera mode real quick and just rotate around this to see what we're looking like. Okay. Yeah, so it is extruded, but it's not picking up any of the light because we have the lights shut off on it. I'm just going to bring this back to where I had it before. I'm going to see if I can figure out how to pause it above. Miter limit. Yeah, this is why shapes can be a little confusing. I wish I'd had a little more practice with this, but I do not. Let me see. Fill rule, blah, 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 blah. Trying to think about how I can make this bevel out the way that I want it to. Let me try just taking this down to 1 ellipse. Delete one of those, and then we're going to move this back behind. So let's go 12. That'll make the middle yellow again. And then let's take this oval and bevel it out. Did you do anything? Doesn't look like it did a doggone thing. 0 extrusion depth. And I'm going to solo this oval just to see what the heck's going on with it. Yeah, so it looks like... Oh, I know what's going on. Sorry. So I forgot to turn the lights back on it. So because I duplicated that original bat oval and I had it ignore lights, that's why we're not able to see any of the beveling on this shape. Details, baby. Details. So this is looking better. We're pretty close. Is it perfect? No. I'd really like to get that inner shape to work. But I don't really have a good idea of how to make that shape subtract correctly. So let's go with what we have. That's what I'm going to say. All right, so we have something really close to the original look. We can control the lighting on the bevels and all that good stuff. I'm going to come in here and tighten this bevel up just a little bit, I think. Go down to like 5. And we've got nice extrusion depth on everything. It's looking pretty good. Okay, cool. So now you have a 3D shape with 3D bevels on it, and if you turn the camera, I'm gonna just do a really quick, like 2-second camera animation here. I'm gonna open up my camera, turn on my point of interest and my position, and I'll have it kind of like rotate into this. So we'll have it kind of come from the side and rotate in. So you can see that it is actually a 3D shape, right? The lights hit the extruded beveled bat, and now we can kind of come in and make this do cool stuff. I'm gonna set my work area so we can kind of see this come in. And they said that motion blur doesn't work, but I'm gonna try it anyway. Yeah, motion blur doesn't work. I don't think. I could have sworn that I've done this with motion blur in the past. We'll just try it and see what happens. Yeah, motion blur doesn't work. I wonder if you can force it. We might be able to force the motion blur.
Why wasn't that in the MK9RX?
What was that? DeAndre? You're just asking questions of yourself?
Yeah, I'm asking questions myself.
Okay. I would recommend, like, paying attention and learning stuff. Because that's what we're here for.
So, if the blur doesn't work, would you just export this out and bring it back into After Effects and throw the blur on?
So let's try this. So one thing that I think we might be able to do, and I don't know if this is going to work or not, is we'll throw an adjustment layer on and we'll use the effect Force Motion Blur. So type in the force and then throw it on the adjustment layer, and then let's see if it blurs it. Is it going to blur it? Are you going to blur it? Blur it! Or it's going to increase my render times to nightmarish settings that nobody would ever want. Do it. Do it. You can render one damn frame. I believe in you.
I love democracy.
Holy buckets. Okay, so Force Motion Blur does work. But you can see our render times are pretty ridiculous. This is, I mean, this is honestly one of the biggest flaws in After Effects is like, Adobe, if you ever hear this, make a 3D renderer inside of After Effects not suck. You've had this for, I don't even know how old this program is. I mean, CC19. I've been using this program for 20 years, and you still don't have a 3D renderer that's worth a crap. So fix it. So this is you can kind of get your motion blur working this way, which is fine and dandy, but the render times go through the roof. I mean, even at half res, this is going to take a long freaking time to render. But that being said, we took a crappy potato quality logo, traced it out with paths, put it in 3D space, gave it beveled edges, lit it, and are able to render it and make it look relatively decent. Obviously, I could do some more work to get like the bevel to work on the outside. I'd have to figure some of that stuff out, but it's totally doable. So that's the way that you can kind of take the bat symbol and clean it up and make it look really good. And the nice thing about this is now that you've got it built, like you could change the composition to a 4K composition and up-res the whole doggone thing and render it high resolution, and it would look great. You could also start doing stuff like using reflection maps, and I haven't really done a lot of reflection map work inside of Cinema, the Cinema 4D renderer. So I'd have to finagle that stuff a little bit. I'm wondering if we can just like put an image like on the other side of it and be able to see it. Well, we can give that a shot and see what happens. So let's just we'll go over to Google real quick and find something. Yes.
Is there any way to go into Illustrator and just do an image trace and get your vector image
Sure.
You can do that in Photoshop.
You could do that. You could do that in Illustrator. Absolutely. That would be a really smart and good way to do it. I am not an Illustrator guy. I'll just say that too. So like that didn't even occur to me. So thank you for bringing it up. Yes, image trace would work really, really well on any of these black and white images. And there's also ways to do it in Photoshop as well, where you can take a low res image, up res it, and image trace it, and it'll create a nice clean path for you. And you can take that path into After Effects and do fun stuff with it. Cool. Okay, so there's Batman. So now DeAndre, this is where I want you to make sure you're paying attention, because I'm going to do this next part just for you. All right. So we got our bat. It takes forever to render, but it works. Let's see. Where is that folder that I was working in? Shape Puppet. All right. Here's Batman. AEP. All right. So we're going to close this project up. Okay. So DeAndre in his project was having trouble with getting his text to read in the time allotted. He was having trouble, quote unquote, slowing down the camera to make it work. All right, so I'm going to pull up DeAndre's project here real quick. Bum bum. All right, I'm going to open this up because we're going to use this as reference. In fact, let me just bring it into After Effects and we'll do it from there. All right, so here's DeAndre's project. He's got this section where the camera moves for all evils, and I'm going slow here, are two remedies. Okay, so for all evils, there are two remedies. All right, so DeAndre, what I would do is, if I were you, is segment this into its own composition, right? And let this play out so that the audience can read what they need to read. And then the end of this is time and silence, right? Okay. So the suggestion was made to break these words into 3D space and have the camera kind of fly by each word so that we can read it and make it interesting to look at and have it work with the timing, right? So let's take DeAndre's section right here, where he's reading, and we're going to lay this out and we're going to do it in 3D. So I'm going to set my in here and set my out at the end, right about there. All right, there's my in and my out. I'm going to go ahead and make my composition from that, and we're going to go ahead and play this back.
There are two remedies. Time and sight for all evils.
All right, so back to the basics on our kinetic typography work. So I'm going to go into the waveform, and I'm going to use the waveform to set up my words.
For all evils.
For all evils. So we've got 1, 2, evils, 3. There's 4. There are 2, which is 6. 2 remedies. All right. All right, so I'm going to kind of let that go and draw out so that I can see a finished composition right there. All right, so I'm going to truncate this just a little bit because we're not going to design the whole doggone thing. I'm just going to set the text up with a background in 3D space so that we can create some parallax, foreground, middle ground, background, and we're going to utilize depth of field, timing, all that kind of stuff to kind of build this to a nice composition and make it look and read properly. So let's go ahead and lay in our words. So I'm going to shut DeAndre's comp off and go ahead and start writing out my words. And I don't want it to be in this crappy font. Let's shut this. No. There we go. there a decent looking font in here that doesn't suck? Not Giddy Up. Not Giddy Up. Ugh, Giddy Up's terrible. Alright, I'm just gonna go with my old standard Avenir black. Because I love it. Kooky that way. Okay. 4. And I'm just going to kind of center line all these right away because I'm going to set them up later into a nice composition. So 4. All evils, there are 2 remedies. So I'm just going to go right down the line. 4. All. Oh, it's just LL. How about all evils, there are. DeAndre, are you watching? You better be watching. 2 remedies. Okay. So I'm going to check my work here and make sure I didn't hose this up too bad. Build a camera real quick. Get me a camera in my composition. Make all these 3D. And I'm going to pull my camera back a little. Alright, so what I'm going to do here, DeAndre, is I'm going to start where I want everything to end, right? What I want to see last. And that's where we're going to build our composition out. So let's take remedies and we're going to scoot it down. And we're going to be working in X, Y, and Z space to do this. So remedies, and then I'm going to turn on 2. And I'm going to start pushing these back in space to change their scale. So instead of scaling them, we're going to scale them in Z space and then fly the camera by the letters or by the words as we go. For all evils, there are 2 remedies. All right, so what I'm going to try to do here is set these up so that... All right, 3,000 pixels. That should do it. All right. 2. Cool. Turn on R. Let's see, that's at 3,000 pixels. So I want these to kind of show up at a similar time. So I'm going to set this to like 3,500. And we'll see how this rolls. I'm probably going to have to adjust this a little bit as we go, but we'll see what happens. I want 1, 1, 1. Okay, it'll be 1, 1. Yeah, we'll just do the 4 of these. Okay, so here we go there. We're going to push this way back. See, that's at 6,000. Cool. Scoot this up a little bit. I'm just going to kind of create a pyramid out of this. Evils. Scoot that back too. So this is going to be a little different. So let's go to 6,000. Oh, that's all. Okay. Let's go to 6,000. Oh, don't do that. That's bad. I'm going to push evils back a little bit more. I just kind of want to create like a nice pyramid out of this whole thing. Evils, and then let's turn on all. Scoot that up. We're at like almost 10,000 pixels here. This is going to be sick. All right. So all, and then let's push this back to like 12,000 and see what happens. Yep. Cool. Last word. Put this in Z space. Let's set this back at like 15,000 pixels. And turn it on so we can see it and slide it up so it's on top of the pyramid. I'm gonna go back even further. Let's go back to like 25,000. So the smaller or the further away from the camera I push these, the more extreme the numbers are going to be. So I'm holding the shift key to slide these around much quicker than would be if I just held onto them normally. All right, so now what we have is, so if we look at this from the side with our camera, I'm going to go to a custom view here real quick. Custom view. If we look at this from the side from our camera, you can see that all this stuff is placed in 3D space, and it's going to do this really cool thing where it kind of all aligns in the middle at the end to create our composition, right? It's going to be cool looking. So we've got all these words, they're all in 3D space. Now we can create a nice move that kind of times out with the text, right? So let's go ahead and make that happen. All right, so like I said, I have my camera set up for where I want the composition to be finished, right? So once the camera stops, this is going to be where it stops. I'm going to go back to my active camera view, and we're going to go to remedies over here, and I'm going to have the camera get here just before we see the word pop on. So I probably should animate my words or cut my words so they come in at the right spots too. Let's do this. Cut all these off so they're in the right spots. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, boom, boom. All right. Okay, oops. So now we have everything kind of cutting in where we want it to cut in. So another cool thing, this is the other thing we're going to do. We're going to pull focus on this thing. So we're going to have our depth of field go from tight to deep so that we can control what words are blurry and what words aren't, right? So what I kind of want to have happen here is when the camera settles on when it hits here, I want it to settle in and then the word to pop on, right? And I want the camera to be in focus on remedies. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of start animating the depth of field on this camera. So I'm going to go into the camera, turn the depth of field on, and then I'm going to turn the aperture way up. And I find it interesting that I'm not seeing really any depth of field. Blur level's at 100%. Let's go 1,000 on this. That's really strange. What the heck is going on here? Active camera set. We're at half resolution. Let's go full. Okay. Let's go to a custom view here real quick. Rotate this around. Zoom this bad boy out. Camera options. Focus distance. Okay, this is really weird that we're not seeing any depth of field even though it's on. Oh, it's because I'm in this crappy Cinema 4D thing. That's right. Okay, so we have to go back to the classic 3D in order for this to work because Cinema 4D does not render depth of field. All right, now let's go back to our active camera, and you can see that the words are all out of focus as they were supposed to be. We're going to control the depth of field a little bit more than that. I'm going to set the aperture back to 250. You can see we've got a nice kind of bokeh going on back there. I'm changing my iris shape to something a little bit nicer that's going to give me a nicer depth of field. And then once remedies pops on, it should be in focus, and I want it to be in focus, so I'm going to go ahead and make sure that my focus plane lines up with remedies here at the end. All right, so we're going to be controlling focus distance, and we're going to be controlling the aperture. So what we're going to do with the aperture is going to ramp the aperture down here at the end once we settle in and we see our word remedies. I'm going to go back to my, I'm going to go to 2 views for right now so that I can see both of these views. And over here, I'm going to go to my custom view so I can see what I want to see. All right, so I got 2 views. I'm going to make sure that this view is set to fit so we can see everything. Cool. So you can see that the words are dropping off in the back due to our aperture. I'm going to set my aperture up a little bit to accentuate this look. All right, so we have our aperture, and I'm going to have the aperture roll off. There's this nice break that DeAndre's worked into his piece. So I'm going to have the aperture kind of roll off over this little break, so that the words will all kind of fall into focus at the end. So I'm going to set the aperture to 0. When I do that, everything will be in focus because it's like the aperture is a tiny pinhole and you see forever into the depths. And I think I'm going to go back and really make this, really make the aperture kind of blur out these words pretty intensely so that as we're flying by them, they kind of fly into focus and out of focus, into focus and out of focus as we're moving by them. And then when we settle, we see the words come into focus. And then we move on to the next frame, right? All right. So we have all of our words. They're laid out. We have our depth of field animated at the end. I'm going to leave the depth of field alone for just a little bit here. And we're going to kind of set our camera where we want it to start. So we need our camera to start kind of close to where this word pops on. So I'm going to shut the depth of field off just for the time being to kind of get my camera moved where I need it to be moved to. And you can see this little red dot right here. This is our word in 3D space. So I'm going to go ahead and take my camera. Yes, DeAndre.
Are you trying to fade in and out from the depth of field, like how the word shows what it's blurry and then it unblurs? Or were you?
That might be naturally part of the effect that I'm kind of working on here. So let's just see what happens. So I'm going to take my camera, and I'm kind of looking at this right view, but I'm working on the active camera view, and I'm going to truck my camera in, and then use the pan tool to pan the camera up, and there's my forward right there. Go ahead and set a couple of keyframes. I'm going to adjust the framing just a little bit here. Now we have a camera that is not moving for whatever reason. Fun. Okay. So that's one. And then I don't know why I'm having to keyframe this in manually. What is this dealio down here? Okay, let's go ahead and scoot in here. And we'll pan the camera up a little bit. There's our forward. And we should see the camera animate now. What the heck is going on here? Oh, I'm animating the wrong thing. That would be why it's not working, Todd. It's been a long day, y'all. Sorry. Alright, so let's make sure our camera actually animates properly. So I'm going to go back to where I started one more time, set my position, and I don't think I'm going to need, maybe I do. I'm going to set up my camera so that I have a 2-node camera instead of a single-node camera, and we're going to do both the point of interest and the position at the same time. And I want these to hit this position a little earlier. Alright. And one more time. We're going to try this one more time. I swear I'm going to get it right this time. Alright. So I need to be able to see my first word, and there it is. And we're going to go ahead and fly the camera where it needs to go. Flying the camera where it needs to go. And moving the camera up so that we can see our first word. Cool, so that's pretty close. So, and the other thing I want to do is I kind of want to time this so that, actually, I'm gonna move the camera in just a little bit. I'm gonna shut off that depth of field just to make it render a little quicker here. Shut off the depth of field, and I want it to fly past the word as it comes out. So I'm going to have the camera move past 4 and up a little bit. Actually, I'm just going to do this over here. Up a little bit. So that as we fly, we see our text come into frame. All evils, there are 2 remedies. Cool. Okay, so now the timing, right? So we can see that the camera is not getting to the words when they pop on screen, right? The camera is late. So we need to go in and we need to adjust that. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to do that with the graph editor. So we're going to move our 2 starting locations first. And well, we could try with the graph editor. What I'm going to try to do first is just take this take these 2 keyframes where it lands and scoot them forward so that the animation happens a little bit quicker. Okay, so we're almost there. And we're going to need to play with it a little bit anyhow. For all evils, there are 2 remedies. Okay, I'm going to move it back to where I wanted it to land before, and we're going to see if we can make this work with our timing. All right, the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little bit of curve action on these things. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to grab the curves, and I'm going to curve both my camera paths just a little bit. And we'll see what that does for our animation. Cool. So it looks like the point of interest curve is a little intense. So we're going to come over on that and back that off just a little bit. Kind of make that perpendicular with, hey, come on now. There we go. There we go. Now we're cooking with gas. Cool. All right. So let's see if we can't maybe make this work a little bit better. Again, so I'm going to use the graph editor. So I'm going to go into the graph editor. I'm going to grab point of interest and position. And I'm going to set both the point of interest and position to ease out. And both the point of interest and position to ease in here. And what I want to do is I want to have my words. I want to have this start out faster and end slower. So I want this to kind of like, I want it to kind of work along a curve, right? Let's make it so we can see what the hell we're looking at. I'm just going to see what's happening here. Okay, the point of interest is a little intense, and I think what I'm doing is I'm monkeying with the position, not the speed. That's kind of an important distinction here. I'm going to go ease in on both of these bad boys on the right, and I'm going to leave the other ones just where they're sitting. So speed should be pretty close. And then we right click on this. Oh, I am editing the speed graph. Okay, hence pixels per second. Let's go up here a little bit, play around with this a little bit more. So I want the point of interest and position curves to be very, very, very close to each other in terms of their orientation. Let's zoom out just a little bit here so we can see them both. Come on, I only want one. And then, can I click on this guy? Okay, give me position. Click on that. And give me a little less here. Alright, there we go. And then I want to do the same thing over here. Okay, getting closer every second. Let's take a peek at this and see what's happening. Ooh, this could be cool, actually. Alright, so let's do this now. I'm kind of digging the way this is looking, so I'm going to just see how it plays out with the audio. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do, turn on all the motion blurs. We're going to go back into our camera and turn on our depth of field. I don't need to keyframe it though, I just want it on. And we're going to go back to the standard view. I'm going to click U so that I can see all of my keyframes. Focus, distance, and aperture look like they're working. All right, let's just render this out and see what it looks like. I'm going to save the time on. All right, so we've got kind of like timing and everything knocked out in terms of where things are coming on screen. It's looking pretty good.
For all evils, there are 2 remedies.
Beautiful, excellent, love it. All right, I'm gonna run over here. I'm gonna find, let's go to Pexels. And then let's go to Castle. And ooh, look at this one. That's fun.
Yeah, I saw that.
That's nice. Look at the frog in that.
Tommy likey. Tommy want wingy.
What the fuck?
If you haven't seen Tommy Boy, you haven't lived, bro.
I mean,
Oh,
I'm
soon
not
enough.
gonna deny that second
Soon
one.
enough.
All right, so let's get our
But
downloaded
because
image
you can't
here.
kill that, which is already dead.
Ancient architecture castle. All right, well, I shared some knowledge with Chris last week that I think I'm going to share with you guys.
No.
All right, so
I don't know about it.
this is a great image to use for 3D space because we've got some serious planes going on in it. So I'm going to solo this image. I'm going to go back to a single view so we can see our single view. I'm going to put it in 3D space. And we're going to work with this image a little bit. So let's take this particular image, and what we're going to do on this part is we're going to kind of cut the bottom off of this with a mask. So we just have the water. Cool. All right, so we just have our water now in our composition. You can see it down on the bottom of the frame. And then the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to take our water and we're going to scale it up on the y-axis. Crazy, but the first thing we're going to do is we're going to center the pan behind tool so that it scales up proper. So we're going to scale this like ridiculously up, because what we're going to do is we're going to lay it down flat in 3D space. I'm going to go like 1000% here. We're going to lay it down flat so that it looks like a flat plane, so that as we fly this camera out, we're actually flying over the water and the castle will be in the background. So there we go, we've got that. Let's rotate it down flat. You can kind of see what's happening now. 90. We're going to bring this up a little bit so that it lays down as like a ground plane basically for the camera. Cool. And of course that would happen. Alright, so let's bring this down far enough so that it doesn't hose us completely, and we will adjust it after we adjust the rest. Alright, so I'm going to drop another version of this ancient castle in here, put it in 3D space, and we're going to slide this castle way, way back into the distance. He's going the distance. He's going for speed. And we need this to go way far back because for is 25,000 pixels back. So we're going to take this ancient castle and put it we're going to put it 50,000 pixels back. Okay. And we're going to do kind of the same type of deal with this bad boy too. So we're going to take this guy and we're going to scale it way up, except we're going to lock all the axes together so that it scales proper like, and keep on cruising. I need to see if this thing is actually doing what I needed to do over here. So what I'm looking for here is I'm looking for the intersection of this big plane with the image in the background. Yes, DeAndre.
Isn't this like that one assignment that we had, and then you showed us that? Yeah, this was like assignment 5, wasn't it?
Yes, similar things, indeed. I'm mixing multiple techniques together in the same project, which is something you all should be doing for all of your projects. The whole idea of learning everything we learn in After Effects is to utilize all of the things. Okay, so we've kind of got our image laid in here. It looks like I need to make this bigger until it intersects with my castle in the background. And then we're going to take the castle in the background and we're going to make that super huge until it kind of meets up in the corners. And I'm going to fly my camera back there so I can see what's going down with all this fanciness. You can do it. I believe in you. You can do it. I believe in you. Is it actually intersecting? I cannot tell. All right, just cruise this thing around a little bit. Go, go. It's only 50,000 pixels back. No big deal. Come on, make it so. Yes, yes I am. Ethan knows that that is from Star Trek, and he knows that I am a nerd that likes Star Trek. So that's why he said, nerd.
That also makes me a hypocrite because I was raised on Star Trek.
Okay, so what I want is I want this castle to intersect with this water plane, and I want it to meet up where we masked it off, right? So it's like the reflection. Crazy idea. All right, so let's go back to our active camera, and this is what it looks like. Neat. All right, so I'm going to take both of these things and scale them both. No, that is not scaling both of them. That is scaling both of them. All right, so then I'm going to take the top castle, scoot it up again. Oops, oops, oops. No, no, no. Scoot it up with the position tool so that this kind of matches what we got. All right, neat. There we go. So we've got this nice 3D world now that's rocking and rolling. Let's go ahead and add all this stuff out in 3D space, and let's see what our composition looks like rendered. I'll save you folks watching this the time. The question was asked, if at the end I wanted the castle to be blurry in the background rather than in focus, what would I do? We're just gonna kind of up the pixel count on the aperture until most of it is in focus, save for the background. You could also help this out, Pete, a little bit. Like if I wanted a little less depth of field on the castle itself, I could go ahead and just add a fast blur to this and just help it out a little bit with some blurriness, but not too much. We want to keep it subtle. So blurriness is set to 16. That way it will still retain the similar effect.
For all evils, for all evils, for all evils.
Record it all.
Hey everybody on YouTube, this is
It's
Got a little bit of a wonky thing happening here where the camera's kind of like zooming out and zooming back in, and it ain't supposed to do that. So what I want it to do is I'm going to set the keyframe interpolation to linear. Okay, that's good. That must mean that I need to do the same thing over here because these are different. All right, so spatial we need to set to linear. Temporal we can leave alone, so that this stays where it's supposed to stay right here. I told you before that I really like cameras that keep moving. So I'm gonna shut off the depth of field or the motion blur here for just a second. I'm gonna just have the camera continue to scoot back a little bit so that the camera keeps moving when it sits right here. I just want there to be a little movement all the time. And then it'll whoosh pan off real fast. Real fast. All right. So let's look at this one more time, see how she rolls.
For all evil, all evils, they are. Time for all evils, there are two remedies. Time for all evils, there are two
Cool.
remedies.
Okay, so I should turn motion blur back on.
We should deal with it.
oh I know.
That'd be tight.
For all evils, Okay.
Oh, that was a big base.
What the heck?
Some serious bass, yo. Pausing again.
Tied for all
Camera moves real
evils,
nice,
there are
and we
two
get a built-in
remedies.
transition at the end.
Tied for all evils, there are two remedies.
So, like, let's just say, for instance, we wanted to then go to our time and whatever the heck he's time and what?
Time and silence.
Time and silence. Okay, so I make a new composition real fast. Comp 1. We're going to call this time and silence. I probably spelt it wrong because I'm a terrible speller. And we're just going to go ahead and put time.
Yeah, we should let you talk with good words like right.
Groot doesn't know talking good like me and you.
His vocabulary consists of I and am and Groot, and specifically in that order.
That's correct. That is correct.
Jacques specializes in
Wait, what is that from?
Guardians of the Galaxy. Go see it.
Which one?
First one, I believe.
I already seen it, but I don't remember that.
Yeah, go see it again. It's pretty aight.
Yeah, it's probably one of the best Marvel movies.
What about Valiant 2? What about that?
Volume 2 is decent. It's not as good as 1, but it's decent. All right. So now let's say you're building a transition and you want to reveal time and silence at the end of that shot, right? We created that pan. It goes to an alpha channel. We want to create a shot here. I'm just going to add a solid in for the background so we can see what we're actually looking at. And then how long is this composition? 14 seconds. Okay, so we want it to do its thing at the end, 14 seconds. What I'm going to do here is just duplicate the original composition, and then what we're going to do is we're going to delete all this stuff, and we're going to put the comp within the comp. So we've got the first comp, and then where does it pan off? Right there. It pans off and brings us to our next composition. So we want to go, we're going to cut this original comp off, back up to where the transition starts, and that's where we want to put our time and silence composition. So this is what's going to happen. It's going to pan off, and voila! Time and silence are revealed behind. So this is how you can use alpha channels and create, you know, custom transitions really easily in 3D space. That's why I really like to work in 3D space, is because you can just have everything fly out of the way and reveal whatever's behind. And then this is kind of what this would look like from front to back rendered.
For all evils, there are two remedies.
Swish.
For all evils, there are two remedies. For all evils.
Right, I could probably slow the transition down just a little bit. So if I come over here and kind of move these guys in a little, now it's happening a little bit slower. So we'll go back to our main composition and move this in so that we kind of get a nice reveal. Whoosh, time and silence. Sweet, so you'd animate those and all that good stuff.
For all evils, there are two remedies.
You can do it. And swish.
For all evils, there are two remedies.
Right, okay, cool. So now, DeAndre, you know how to time, how to make things come on screen when you want them to come on screen. We're seeing the words, we're understanding the words, right? It's important for you to be able to make your audience see what you want them to see when you want them to see it. It's very important. Not to mention the fact that now you have a really cool camera move that's zipping through 3D space. We have some faux depth created with the background, with the lake and the castle. We've controlled depth of field. We've controlled focus distance. We've created a custom transition by just panning the camera off to one side and bringing it to an alpha channel, which nicely creates this really interesting kinetic typography look. Yeah, it works really, really well. Works great. Let's do just a tiny taste of puppet pinning for next week, and then I'll cut you guys loose. We save. Time and silence spelled incorrectly. All right. I'm rebelling against.
Everything you've learned.
I'm rebelling against English. Yes, I'm still recording. Okay, so let's have just a tiny taste of puppet pinning. All right, so puppet pinning is super fun. You can create all kinds of crazy stuff with puppet pinning. But first, we need to find something fun to puppet pin. So I'm going to type in cartoon character on alpha and look for something that we can quite easily pin and kind of start create. Oh, this is perfect right here. Tell me it is on alpha for reals. Yo. Open image in new tab. Okay, it looks like it's on alpha. Maybe we'll get lucky with this. What in the hell? Why? Okay, it says PNG. Did it download? It downloaded it for me. Nice. Tell me it's on alpha. Doesn't look like it's on alpha.
Looks like it's a gradient.
It's not on alpha. Boo. All right, let's see if we can make it alpha real fast. All right, so I'm going to take this, put it in a composition, and then I'm going to duplicate this layer, and I'm going to go over to effects and presets, and I'm going to choose threshold. Threshold makes things black and white. So I'm going to put threshold on top of this, and then I'm going to vary the threshold until the whole dude is filled in super fuzzily and crappily. All right, if you're going to do this right, can't do it this way. Poop! I need a character on alpha. All right, let's take... oh, come on. There's got to be somebody on alpha here. Give me what I want. Okay, this kind of looks like it's on alpha.
But is it a trick?
That might be a trick. Precious. Alright. Maybe Fashion Girl's on alpha. She could kind of work. She's not very good. What works better is like a character that's front facing and its arms and its legs can be manipulated, because that's what we're going to do with the puppet pin tool. Let's go for this thing and see what happens. Be on alpha. Oh, I guarantee you it's just fake alpha. You're just screwing me. Fake alpha. Why would you... Why would you...
There, it's definitely not alpha.
Yeah, it's not alpha. It's fake alpha. Those hose beasts. It didn't even download. Alright, whatever. Okay, for the sake of time, I'm going to take this really crappy threshold that I did and use it as a track mat to cut the dude out. And then I'm going to puppet pin the dude on white so that we don't see the really crappy crap all over the guy, which we don't want. Alright, so we have our character semi-cut out. We're going to take our character... and we're going to put our character into a new composition, and we're going to puppet pin our character. First, I'm going to throw up a white solid in the background so that he matches with what he started with. Click OK. And we've got a character that we can work with. All right, so you have to have a character that has arms, legs, something that you can puppet pin and make move around and animate in an interesting way. If I were to do this, I would do kind of a combination of things. I'd probably cut the legs off the guy and give him a walk cycle. And then I would puppet pin the money and create the bobbing effect of the money bouncing in front of him with the puppet pin tool. So let's do that. So I'm going to grab the puppet pin tool, which is the little pin up here, and we're going to click it. And we're going to start pinning our character. So the way that we want to start pinning is we kind of want to pin places that are control points for what we're puppet pinning, and also pivot points, right? So I'm going to do a couple pins. I'm going to do a pin here on the dude, and a couple pins on each of these little pivot points, and a pin on the money. All right, so right away, kind of what you get is the ability to kind of like flex and move things around really easily, right? Is Ethan's brain exploding right now?
No, just an obscure web show I like uses this kind of stuff as most of its animation.
Uses puppet pinning.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, puppet pinning's awesome, man.
If anyone's,
I'm gonna back up just a little bit and see if I can't make this work a little better. Yeah, that's kind of nice. So now what we've kind of got is we've got the ability to kind of like create some nice motion on this money with the puppet pin tool. So a couple other things that you can do with the puppet pin tool. You've got 3 different tools kind of wrapped up in one. You got puppet pin, puppet overlap, and puppet starch. So if you have something that you want to overlap in front of something else, that's where you use the overlap tool, and you can basically push it in back or in front of whatever it's supposed to overlap with. The starch tool allows you to starch areas of your puppets so they don't move. And then I'm going to turn the show mesh on so I can see what's actually being starched. Mesh 1, deform composite, blah, blah, blah. Density and expansion. Okay. All right, so now when I move the pins around, our dude stays pretty stationary. There are ways you can go in and refine the starch areas so that he won't move at all. So things that you don't want to move at all will not move. Let's see, mesh 1, deform. There's our pins. Oh, good. Okay. So here we've got our starch pins. Yep, pin type starch. Okay, cool. What happens if I expand it? It's supposed to like light up the sections that it's actually starching. And it's been a long time since I've used this tool, so just bear with me a little bit. Long and short, since we're short on minutes here, like I said, you can start to animate your character using the different pins that you've created. So the really cool thing about the puppet pin tool is it'll actually record your mouse inputs. So if you use a stylus or a mouse or anything like that, you can create complex animation really quickly with your characters by just recording your mouse actions, which will transfer to the puppet pins and allow you to move stuff around on the screen very easily. So if we wanted to say make this little piece of money kind of bounce around a little bit, so like kind of like a up and down, left and right motion, what you do is you hold the command tool and you click, and it turns from a puppet pin position deal to a little stopwatch, which means it will record your inputs now, and it'll start recording your inputs as soon as you press the mouse button. So I'm going to press the mouse button and kind of create some bobble on this money, and it's going to start doing its thing. Here we go. There we go. And it recorded all that stuff. If I go ahead and play this back, we've got some nice little motion going on with our puppet. So if you coupled that with like a nice leg walk cycle with this guy, you'd have him animated relatively quickly. The leg cycle would take a little while to knock out, but it wouldn't be too long until you have a pretty decent looking puppet. The other thing that you could do is like with the legs is you could actually take the front leg and cut that off and puppet that on its own. So you could create a walk cycle with the puppet pin tool instead of having to like draw, 24 versions of the leg. You could create the leg walk cycle just by animating where those pins are on your character and starching certain spots and then allowing certain spots to bend and flex. So that's kind of the puppet pin tool just quickly in a nutshell tonight. And so that's what you'll be using next week to kind of create some interesting looking animations using the puppet pin tool. Boom. There we go. Done for the night, you guys. Stop!